Hello, everyone, and welcome to this free episode of TF.
It's the free one.
I was getting so used to not having to
business-like free one this time. Just like sort of like having somewhere better to be. It's the free one. Pushing out of the way.
If you couldn't tell, listener, Milo was looking at his watch, he was tapping his foot, he was making the come on gesture while saying it was the free one.
It is the free one.
Yeah.
That's all we can say for sure at this stage of the episode.
Right. And I am very happy to welcome our guest. It's Amardeep Singh Dhillon, editor at Red Pepper and organizer with the South London Bartenders Network. Amar, how's it going?
Incredibly caffeinated, but like fine apart from that, Angel. Thank you.
Hell yeah.
So we've got a show today that's going to be, after we're done with the news, of course, it's going to be all about the changing nature of the hospitality industry and how in the last few years, organizers have managed to score some wins against I would say, quite hostile and aggressive workplace, and that's just the patrons, folks.
Yeah, hospitality, don't let the term hospitality mislead you. Those people are inhospitable as fuck, as a general rule.
But before we get into that, which I'm leading us into with a sort of a startup-inflected segment, but that's going to come later, we want to issue the first Freebooter of the Year award to former Prime Minister Elizabeth Truss, who has...
She's just doing shit now, and she's doing the funniest possible shit. She's going to Taiwan in order to, like, bolster their sort of democratic resistance against the People's Republic of China. The one thing that they needed, the one thing that they were missing was the scourge of hotel bathrobes herself, Liz Truss. And she's just going to be in town. I'm not sure if anyone's even going to take a meeting with her. She's just going to be around. I've had it pointed out to me, though, that she is going to be in Taiwan the same weekend. There's a massive BDSM convention. So get it.
Coincidence?
Girl. Yeah, absolutely. Here's the thing, right? If we can send you and Nate, Milo, out into the street to do like citizen journalism on the queue, I think we can afford to send me to Taiwan to infiltrate a BDSM convention and see what I can learn.
Well, look, the Australians have been dealing with the supposed Chinese threat by building nuclear subs, and so we have sent one nuclear-grade sub to Taiwan
for
their own preparation.
I think it's great. It's like it's like a video game exploit, right? Where because she was prime minister for 7 weeks and now can just go around starting wars without actually being a prime minister.
And that's feminism.
Perfect.
Yeah, she's girl bossing. Right. She absolutely is. And I can't wait to see what she gets up to. She's going to get kicked out of so many hotels. She's going to go to like one of the semiconductor fabs and get like lube stains and fingerprints on one of the machines. And possibly start a war with China. I can't wait.
Liz Truss at a microchip factory and somehow walks out with 10 branded bathrobes, and they're like, I don't even think we have those.
The rare TSMC
made?
bathrobe. Yeah.
Okay, all right. TSMC bathrobe, copyright. You
Yeah,
can't make
we
it.
are not
That's
selling
bathrobes.
You're not packaging up like 100 bathrobes.
But no, it is very amusing though that she's prime minister for 7 weeks, and because she was prime minister, now just the world is saddled with this bizarre weirdo going around being strange.
It's Roman shit. They had a different consul every 6 months, but then they were pro-consul for the rest of their life. She's being sent abroad to the provinces. She's on a pro-consular mission. Now it's her time to make all of her money by going to Bithynia and, stealing exotic silks or whatever.
She's going to go, like, taunt Odoacer, being like, you're never going to invade.
Yeah, she's going to go and fuck with Mithridates every day.
One thing I will say is that this puts the Chinese government in a sort of an awkward position in that they're sort of obliged diplomatically to treat this as a massive provocation, which requires them to take Liz Truss seriously as an idea. And that's really a sort of an awkward position to be in, to be like, how dare you, sort of like rebel province of Taiwan, host Britain's messiest girl boss?
So we are very excited to see what kinds. And, before we move on to Liz Truss as well, just the other fact that like she's making her former employees now at the Foreign Office comment, "We do not comment on the travel plans of private citizens."
Yeah, Liz Truss, never heard of her. She never worked here, never will, you know?
Yeah, so, as kind of, Pigpen from the Peanuts gang, right? He just walks around with just a cloud of mess and disorder around him. We have found the Pigpen of the British institutional setup, just walking around, just messing shit up.
I honestly love her. You know, I love this for her.
Absolutely.
Honestly, I'd rather that she like spent more time abroad than she was back here, because if the kink at Pride discourse starts with Liz Truss, I think I might actually have to do some conversion therapy on myself.
I'm just manifesting something here now. Liz Truss as a puppy girl being led around on a leash by a Met police officer, like that one piece of discourse a few years ago. Just hold that, really rotate that in your mind, you know.
Wait, how did you get into my hard drive?
Yeah. So I'm moving on, of course, from our, again, no, don't say that we're like, oh, we think she's like unfit for public life because of all this crazy stuff. No, she's the most fit for public life of any of them. No, so
bring her back.
Yeah. Russell T Davies has owned us again.
Oh no!
Once again, we have been.
Has he released a new Years and Years?
Well, no, it's just that stuff from years and years.
He's like released a new Years and Years, like he's sort of like a Bin Laden. You know, it's come to a VHS tape that's been hand delivered to CNN. You know.
Yeah, Russell T Davies in Tora Bora, like waggling a finger at the camera. I would
don't
like
get
that.
me started about ISIS.
That's right.
No.
Yeah.
So another
because I'm running ISIS, and let me tell you, it's a bloody tough job. Some of these people are incompetent.
So essentially, what has happened is, as the part of the sort of ongoing, escalating bipartisan consensus that it's important to crack down on fully legal asylum seeking and migration in general. A 3-story barge, which we used to house migrants, is now being built in Falmouth. And again, the point of this, of course, is to be as cruel and inhuman as possible.
Yeah,
so that
it looks it too.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Like if you've seen this barge, it looks horrific. It's a prison hulk. We're going back to sort of like 19th century solutions for these things.
A very British response though, when pictures of it came out. Lots of blue check tweets along the lines of, this place looks better than my house, and stuff along like the lines of, you know, this looks like a fancy flat in London that they're going to live there for free. So safe to say,
British landlords catching strays.
Yeah, but the British landlords have also been owned by this, because somehow, even though this monstrosity in the sea looks ugly and is designed to be that way, it also seems to remind them of the luxury of the housing that they charge like shit tons for.
Interesting.
What is also happening as well, right? Like, because it's almost barely worth, in terms of like the sort of legislative back and forth, right? It's barely worth thinking about what the Conservatives will do, because they're simply going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah,
you know?
maximum cruelty.
But of course, it's always interesting to see the responses from the people who are supposed to be opposing them. And Keir Starmer has said, now, there has been some flip-flopping on this in the last 24 hours since recording, but...
Flip-flopping from Keir Starmer?
Oh, come on. Has said...
I don't even own flip-flops. I find them to be a very silly item of footwear. I prefer a solid sandal with a heel strap.
When you bring in new legislation, Starmer said, it can often involve sort of dealing with the predecessor legislation that there is. It doesn't automatically mean it's necessary to repeal existing legislation in order to introduce your own. When asked if he would repeal... the migrant bill. Now,
you could just say yes. You could just say yes, and it would be a free win.
Yeah, exactly. It's very unpopular, and also, again, what he's being is technically right, but not wanting to say he opposes it because he's worried that the Sun or the Mail or whatever is going to say, Sir Softy is soft on migrants and wants to bring in more people to live on your terrible boat.
When they knighted Mr. Softy, the inventor of the ice cream.
But who cares? They say that anyway. It doesn't matter. They say it anyway.
Yeah, but also, I mean, it's also fully like what he believes, right? Like the man is just a career racist and cop. Like this is the same guy who came out saying that he was not opposed to the GPS tagging of criminalized asylum seekers a couple of months ago, right? Like it's not even that he's like bad at politics, which obviously he is. It's also that he's just fully a white supremacist. Like this is fully what he wants to do. It's like Blair 2.0 without the charisma, as so many other people have said before.
And also, I like that he seems to be articulating the position that no parliament can bind a future parliament except when it's politically convenient to keep the rightward ratchet moving, at which case one parliament can actually bind them. What are you going to do? Repeal the laws of your... No, come on. That would be ungentlemanly. They worked really hard on those laws.
The racism dial only goes one way, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's right.
Shoddy workmanship, a story of a lifetime. British landlords again.
And also, it's the local Conservative MP, the only sort of force against this in British politics now appears to be NIMBYism.
Yeah, this is really weird. Like, anytime they try and do this, anytime they try and, like, corral migrants into any kind of substandard housing, whether that's, like, hotels or here, like, prison hulks, it's literally, like, some sort of, like, country squire, sort of, like, gentry MP being like, well, I think that would frighten the horses. And it's like, so that's the opposition. It's not Keir Starmer. It's that one guy. Great.
So, there's only one opposition in the country, and it's actually property prices.
Yeah.
So, like, hang on a minute. Where are you going to put this death camp?
So the person who's actually opposing this legislation is Richard Grosvenor Plunkett Ernie Airy Drax.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. Oh, the guy from Moonraker.
May I tempt you to a cucumber sandwich? That guy. Yeah.
Yeah, so the villain from Moonraker is to the left of Starmer on the issue, as of so far.
Mr. Starmer, you appear with the tedious inevitability of an unloved season.
So, you know, it's, I mean, this is going to be more as it comes, right? But the simple fact, right, that this is to the right of anything even proposed in the Tory manifesto, right, that is just going entirely unopposed by, you know, anyone wearing red ties, sort of shows the sort of that the only thing you can really do is the only thing that actually works, which is going and sitting in front of the police van when they're trying to like kidnap people to put in this thing, essentially.
I mean, there's a whole sort of diversity of tactics, whether that's like whether you're like legal challenges or whatever. But yes, absolutely, it should be untenable to imprison people on the basis of like seeking asylum.
I mean, obviously, at the same time as well, I think like. I wasn't going to talk about this, but one of the reasons that the kind of outcry over the arrests that happened over the coronation of our new king over the weekend, one of the reasons that kind of the discourse around that has pissed me off so much is that people talking about how, it's now illegal to protest peacefully in Britain, as if that right hasn't always been like heavily mediated by like police discretion on the ground. And so like, it's true, I think that like the main resistance to like a prison barge, like on the outskirts of like Falmouth or wherever it is, like is going to have to come through like direct action and protest on the streets. At the same time, we have a lot of sensible liberals who are like raising the hue and cry about how now it's impossible to protest. Like if you do that, you make it harder for us actually to take action, which we still can do.
You've gotten this sort of like the conscience of the Archbishop of Canterbury aroused. No less an establishment figure than that has been standing up in the House of Lords saying like, you know, this is sort of like morally reprehensible. What difference that's going to make, I don't know, but it certainly speaks to like how alienated they've managed to make liberals.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the calculation, right, is that they figured they kind of don't. Either they figured they kind of don't need liberals, or as what we talked about before is just, you know, the and this sort of actually even plays it plays in some of the local election results as well, right? Is that the Tories have decided that they're sort of they're actually tired of winning.
Yeah,
their program has run out of road.
I actually love being suplexed. And yeah, this sort of like bonfire of the vanities that I'm doing, where I'm trying to do like maximum cruelty to as many people as possible on the way out before I'm stopped by someone who like agrees with 99% of my politics. That's actually kind of a victory lap. And, you know, in practical terms, they're right about that. It is a victory lap. This is just them sort of like, you know, spiking the football.
Yeah, and the Tories saw that there were no worlds left to conquer, and instead of weeping, they went into a sort of killdozer type situation where they're just going to keep making things worse until eventually a SWAT team pries the lid off of their concrete encased bulldozer and shoots them in the head.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to talk about in the news before we go into sort of AI, hospitality, and organizing in that sense is an ongoing entry in our series of trying to solve Britain's problems by using people from the town or otherwise without solving them.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So we can now add to our long list of just use people from the town solutions, which has included teachers, which is hilarious, border guards, which would be hilarious if it didn't allow for that vigilantism to creep into an already quite cruel institution.
Staffing the front of house at Joanna Cherry's talk at the Edinburgh Fringe. lest we forget.
Yeah. There are now is now being suggested the government plans to fix NHS staffing to let people become doctors without getting a degree.
Yes, I'm so happy about this. One of my big predictions is that eventually the government will try and launch a Skillshare course on how to do surgery. And this is coming so close to it. I loved this when this came out. It's insane. It's chaotic. It's just, it's perfect. I love it.
We can finally have surgery, Baz.
Yeah, that's right.
I think it's amazing that we've got like the government finally coming down on the great kind of like workerist debate of whether or not there is such a thing as like unskilled or skilled labor. They're saying no, all labor is like entirely skilled the same, and so anyone can do it.
There's no such thing as skilled labor. That's what they're saying. Surgery, anyone can do that.
Half reading one of those Twitter threads, but like I'm really excited by this because I can do like an hour's Zoom call training, and finally I can make my parents proud of me.
It's 1 hour Zoom call, 55 minutes of which is just GDPR stuff. Don't forget, heart important, brain important, other stuff pretty important. Go wild.
I also do love the idea of this kind of like precaritizing medicine. I think is one of the most harebrained like things that you would sort of think, but okay, no, they can't do that. They wouldn't do that. Like, with other types of things, accountancy, maybe. Becoming a criminal lawyer, perhaps. People do defend themselves in court, and they are genuinely quite funny to listen to.
That's what I call a criminal lawyer.
But like, oh shit, man, I don't know.
It's the last bastion of like middle class like professionalism left, right? And that's why all of the BMA's communications have like, for better and for worse, been like, you expect when you become a doctor that you make like good money, and now you don't, and isn't that fucked? And now they've gone a step further than that, where it's like, no, actually, we don't need doctors anymore. You can just like do it based on vibes. Have a go, chip in,
have a go. Well, last time I went to the dentist, she let me play with the drill a little bit.
You are a dentist now.
So I'm a dentist now. She let me do that because she forgot to use the numbing agent for a little bit, and so she was just like, "Don't sue me." And I was like, "Okay, let me play with the drill." And I got to play with the drill. So now I'm a dentist.
3D chess, Sigma male detected.
I think the aspect of the economy that this is going to kind of actually impact that no one's talking about is the Indian aunties that are doing matchmaking, right? If like a doctor is no longer like a discrete signifier in the metric of an eligible bachelor, like what the fuck are you meant to do?
A lot of people are going to be able to.
This man is a YouTuber. He has many subscribers.
Well, look, this is actually, I'm very happy. Well, no, I would have been happy in an alternative world where I was single because of all the times when I was rejected.
Miserable.
When I was rejected.
Brave man
when I was
there.
rejected for what I mean is that when I was rejected on the account of being a silly media person, right, and I wasn't like a doctor like my cousins. Well, fuck them, right? Fuck them to hell.
So I'm going to add another layer to our sign that says like oil warehouse, derivatives trading
general
house,
hospital.
And
I can be Dr. House. That's like my dream. I actually wanted to be like Dr. House when I was a teenager.
We're all
now everyone gets to be Dr. House. We get to be a doctor who's rude.
I think we should follow this through. Like I've got fucking 2/3 of a law degree. I'm a barrister now. You're a dentist.
Yeah. I'm a CEO.
Yeah.
You can be, you can be Dr. House in the sense that you have a medical degree you printed off at your house. Come to my house and I'll do surgery
Bold
on
of
you.
you to assume someone has a house.
Yeah, oh, that's very true.
Well,
Actually,
you know what
yeah.
it's just like so many things, right? This is just a return to like Victorian and pre-Victorian times when your barber could be like, yeah, I'll cut out your kidney also. You'll take a little off the sides and a little off the kidney.
We're bringing back the polymath. Right?
I
think
don't-
that's
I don't-
beautiful. That's
yeah.
nice.
I don't want to let a modern barber do my surgery because all they know how to do is fades. What are you going to put a fade on my fucking liver?
They're gonna put a fade on your dick, Alex. It's gonna taper like a mouse's head.
The bad news is we couldn't save your father, but the good news is we did give him a fade on his liver.
Yeah. The good news is your father now tapers.
It's
pointier.
completely dead on the table, but I have like perfect Turkish haircut.
Yeah. You look like the guy from the meme. With the quiff.
So we're now just using people. You know what I think has happened? I think that the British government saw those memes people were doing of the good doctor, and we're like, we have enough neurodivergent people in Britain. Let's let a few of them have a go. Maybe we'll generate a Doogie Howser situation.
Yeah, being a doctor is when you misgender a trans person over the course of about an hour. And to be fair, this is what the NHS actually believes.
That is also going to be just another thing, like, you know, you go in for heart surgery and you end up like not. Well, no, that wouldn't work, would it? Yeah. No, because they're TERFs, so they wouldn't do anything. They would refuse.
No,
to-
you would refuse.
Okay,
to.
but-
You would come in as part of like gender reassignment, and you would end up
With
getting
a
heart
fade.
surgery you didn't need.
No, you don't know what the
With a
fade.
fade as well.
Okay, but like imagine conversely the liberatory potential here, right? Which is that you could get a bunch of trans people suddenly going into healthcare, and suddenly, boom, we have
They're the only doctors.
Yeah, exactly.
New plan
fair enough,
detected. That's what I'm going to do. Yeah, I'm just going to do that. I have to make sure I actually learn how to do the surgery instead of sick fades. But like, other than that,
I do.
Yeah, qualify as a surgeon and do it on yourself, like that fucking Norwegian soldier
Ooh.
cutting off his
Yeah,
toes
yeah.
during frostbite.
I feel like
yeah.
you unlock
Or
an
Master and
achievement if you
Commander.
like do your own surgery. Yeah.
Yeah, then you unlock the same causus belli achievement that Liz Truss unlocked. You can go freeboot diplomacy after you do that.
I do think it's important to say that like, I'm not like necessarily inherently against like new qualifications and new routes into like vocational like jobs and
sure.
stuff, right? I think that's fine. It's just obviously that's not the fucking reason they're doing it.
No. And like there are a lot of things that are incredibly wrong with the way this is set up right now, right? Like going into medical school, like number one, like the people who are more likely to go to do it and go somewhere like prestigious and get through it will have money and are more likely to be white and are more likely to be men and all this stuff. And like that stuff should be challenged, but just obliterating the idea of that you should have training as a doctor so we can like try and just solve the NHS crisis without spending any money is very amusing.
But this is the problem in and of itself. Like the serious point in this is that like the shortage of doctors isn't because like there is a short like people don't want to become doctors and they want to become YouTubers and like, you know, do sick fades. There's a shortage of doctors because you need money to train to become a doctor, right?
Yeah.
And like you can sort of argue that maybe, you know, you can sort of like shorten those kind of the courses down. Like, you know, I think that's a different argument. But the problem right now is that no one wants to put money into actually doing the things. No one, the Tories don't want to do it. The Labour Party certainly don't want to do it.
When all the doctors we do train leave
And so,
because
like-
they can earn better money in almost any other Western country.
And so, like, you set up a medical course that's what, like, vocational, right? You still got to pay for it. You still got to pay for it. And the problem is, like, when you've got, like, local colleges cutting, like, funding to do, like, electrician courses and plumbing courses and stuff, how the fuck are you going to afford to make them into doctors? None of this makes any sense. It's not supposed to. I know. It's just supposed to just, like, be content for this show. But, like...
Yeah. Well, it's that you can what we keep seeing in the Britain trying to solve its problems like by moving the pieces around the board, right? We are really trying to. We're not just rearranging the deck chairs in the Titanic. We're rearranging the deck chairs in the Titanic to try to stop it sinking. Like,
Yeah.
that's essentially what we're. And it's the same thing with the new this is the last thing we'll talk about, but the same thing with the new mortgage rules or new mortgage that was announced by the Skipton Building Society, allowing people now to take out 100% mortgages.
It's never been tried before, and it's never gone wrong before.
It's never been tried since 2007.
Oh no!
It's
Margot
totally
Robbie
different
said
this time.
something about it, but I wasn't really paying attention.
Yeah, you were too focused on the fact that she was in the bad. God damn you, Adam McKay.
So the vibe of this one is like, it's very difficult for people to save money to get a deposit on a mortgage, which is true. Therefore, we're going to like solve the need for them to do that by just having them sort of bet everything on interest rates not going up, which they're going to do.
So depending on when you buy a house, think of it a bit like a spin of a roulette wheel. If you buy a house in sort of before the everything bubble started in the early 2000s, then what you have done is you have effectively found a broken roulette wheel that always pays out. If you buy a house after the everything bubble, like sort of between sort of 2008 and COVID, then you're sort of betting on like red or black, basically. When you're covering zero, right? You're doing pretty well. And also the roulette wheel is still broken. You still make money in the end.
Weirdly extended roulette metaphor.
Yeah. But what 100% mortgage is at a time of high and rising interest rates, because like in the UK, just a brief aside, I think it's worth saying this. In the UK, the Bank of England's mandate to fight inflation is just no matter what. But when that mandate was set up, they imagined that inflation could only come from underinvestment, not a supply chain crisis, right? And so they're basically trying to use a tool that works when the economy is too good, because there's a supply chain crisis and these things keep crashing into one another. And it's why like Jerome Powell, in effect, has one of the things is he's been able to actually like kind of get U.S. inflation down by like a combination of things like raising interest rates, but also like not so many things in the U.S. are dependent on gas prices, whereas in the U.K., food prices are also directly correlated with gas prices because electricity is so expensive and so much of our shit is grown in greenhouses. It's insane. Like it's a direct one-to-one relationship. So food price inflation is just energy prices, but with a Scooby-Doo mask on, basically. And the reason electricity prices are so high is that we have an insane system of energy pricing where it's called merit order marginal pricing, where, and this is gonna like really bake your noodle, the price of electricity is set by the price of the least carbon efficient electricity generation medium. So that means if the price of natural gas goes up, the price of wind goes up to match it, to incentivize more wind investment, which means that right now, all the wind that we built has created huge windfalls for the people who built it because they sell their power as though they're generating it from gas.
So
great.
So what you're saying is,
I really like the windfall pun. That's what
that
I
was
didn't
very
actually
clever.
make it on purpose.
So what you're saying is get one of these 100% mortgages and give a bank all of your money.
That is financial advice, yes.
Yeah, take out one of these 100% mortgages on a wind farm.
That actually is a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
Copyright.
Look, you gotta play the cards you're dealt.
Diversify your portfolio. Then use that house. Use the first floor as an operating theatre, and the second floor as a legal office.
Both floors are also a barber. The lawyer is also a barber.
There's a downstairs barber and an upstairs barber.
Yeah, podcasting studio at the top of the wind turbine.
That's right.
Also a barber.
I mean, also a barber.
So the branding of this makes me very angry, though, because the idea is essentially you're going to take all of these people's money and new houses back the moment interest rates go up again, which they will do very shortly. But the branding of this is like, aren't we kind for like helping people to get on the housing ladder?
Yeah, well, you know why they're doing it, right? Is they're doing it because A, in order to try to solve the no one in Britain has anywhere to live problem, again, rather than just doing the thing that will work but is ideologically unpalatable, we're just continuing to rearrange the deck chairs in the Titanic, being like, what if this exact market credit setup solves the problem? And so by loosening a lot of rules on what kinds of mortgages people can get, all it took was Skipton Building Society saying, hey, wait a minute, I noticed that in a difficult housing market, applications are down. So maybe what we should do is just bring more borrowers in so we can be the first movers on this very dangerous product, get a lot of people borrowing from us, and then we're just going to get a lot of customers. And then if interest rates go up, which if energy prices don't fall, they probably will, then these people are going to be stuck in negative equity after 2 years, basically. And what it essentially means, right, is it's that the people on the precipice of being able to get onto the housing ladder, they've been welcomed onto the ladder, but the step that they've been put on is it's been eaten by termites, essentially. And so once again, it's like the shit rolls downhill, right? Like this new innovation is going to just dangles hope in front of people, and for some people it might work, but a lot of other people are probably going to get fucked.
Shit rolls down the spiral staircase of my wind turbine, which I've recently purchased.
This is very funny.
And I'm lording it over all I survey.
One expert talked to about this said the lenders were interested in volume rather than quality, but noted the world is different than it was in 2007.
It's worse.
And this will work so long as 100% loan value mortgages are, quote, always underwritten sensibly, which I remember was the thing that saved us in 2007 from having an era-defining recession.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I just think we should go back to strippers buying 4 or 5 investment properties in South Florida. I think it's time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was a documentary. Anyway, that's enough about not hospitality. I want to talk about hospitality. So I can't imagine the Ivy House necessarily making investments in this level of automation as an early mover, but in the U.S., and among like lots of quick service restaurant chains, like in the UK as well, there is, as we remembered in we've talked about in this show before, right? Like every recession, labor gets replaced by capital, and the jobs don't come back. The emblem of the last recession is the kiosks in McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
So now another wave of that is coming.
Oh, what's going to be replaced by a kiosk now?
Yeah. Well.
Oh no, is it podcasters?
Oh god.
Oh no.
Choose your own riff. Like it's like a soundboard.
Yeah. I'll have the Starmer impression, a reference to a new savory vape flavor. While I was in Italy, I thought of a new savory vape flavor, which is raw prawn and pistachio.
Ugh.
Oh,
it's really good.
No, you can't have fish in a vape. That's just perverse.
The fish vape suffuses your lungs.
I think you get like a smoked salmon vape. I think that could be nice.
This is what gives you like the Innsmouth look. You can't have a fish vape.
Anyway. So what we're looking at in the States, of course, is that new wave of AI, quote unquote, enabled automation. And I think this is like the idea that the hospitality jobs are about to be under fire again underscores the importance of actually organizing some of these people.
Yeah, fully. I mean, like, to be a wanker about it for a minute, like what we're seeing in like hospitality is kind of what happened to like production in the States in particular, like about 100 years ago, right? So you had like the taylorization of labor, which is kind of like splitting up like jobs into like quite discrete, quote unquote, descaled bits of work, and then like Fordism, which kind of arranges that into like an assembly line. And it's been quite difficult until relatively recently to like be able to do that in customer service, right? Because it relies so much on having like a human face, because people are really fucking lonely. And so people go to McDonald's to talk to people a lot of the time, right? Or to get into like fist fights.
It's both equal forms of social interaction, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely, right? I mean, like the class empowers itself as it sees fit. But we see like this kind of onset of automation, like it's already been the case for quite a while. So you've got the kiosks and stuff at like McDonald's, but you've also got like the behind the scenes automation. Greg's, for example, uses an automated like key performance indicator where like staff have to put in certain inputs, and if there's not like certain outcomes met, you automatically get like a strike that has an impact on like your job security, on how you're disciplined. So that automation in the background has already been happening. So in lots of ways, it's not new. And like you can see like the encroachment even of like CCTV cameras and surveillance, like in hospitality sites, has been coming down the road for a long time. So like I think this kind of what we're talking about here, I can't remember the name of the AI thing. What's it called?
So what we're talking about, the example of AI is White Castle in the States.
That's it.
Has introduced several machines that are now rolling out to more stores. Flippy 2. Well, it flips the burgers.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And then
sure.
Julia, which takes and processes orders. It's less descriptive.
There's a sort of a
Flippy
cultural import here because like Harold and Kumar can't get served by Flippy 2 and Julia. That's it really undercuts the whole movie.
Well, because they only went to White Castle because they were lonely.
Well, basically, that was what happened.
Yes,
For a fist fight.
So,
They did get into a fight at the White Castle, kind of.
So,
Makes you proud to be British.
Emma, you were saying.
I don't know, my brain's gone a different place now. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that like, it's obviously like quote unquote scary to see like that onset of automation even further in hospitality. But hospitality is already like incredibly precarious, right? Like the vast majority of people in hospitality like will never have signed a contract. They'll be on de facto 0 hours contracts. Like employers routinely violate employment law, often like without even knowing about it, right? And so like when you start like trying to organize within your own workplace or talk to other workers in the hospitality industry, like when we started like teaching ourselves employment law, we were quite shocked by what we found about just the level of shit that was just straight up illegal that we had absolutely no idea about, right? And alongside that, it's also the fact that like a lot of people working in hospitality, like most of us don't see it as a career, right? Like I'm going to be working like my last shift at the pub, like RIP. I'm going to miss it so much. Like I do actually really enjoy the work. But like the truth is for a lot of people, that's not the vocation, right? The goal isn't to stay in hospitality forever. But so in the short term, while people are doing that, while they're going to become like really famous musicians or like really well-paid screenwriters or like really successful guys doing podcasts, like there's a lot of us will like happily trade in like the alcohol that you can either steal or like some supervisors or managers will give to you, the coke that the security guards will like confiscate and dish out to you. Like people will like happily take that as like a fine trade-off for like secure employment and good pay. Because the minute you try to get people to start like organizing around the workplace, in lots of cases, it feels like an acceptance that like, oh shit, like this is actually like a defining part of what I do and who I am.
It's not a side hustle anymore.
Yeah.
And you know, it's all of these things I think are happening, as we say, in the face of another automation wave. And I think this article from QSR. So again, I sometimes like to say sort of how I sort of look at stuff. You read trade publications, and the most weird stuff gets written. This is from Quick Service Restaurant Quarterly.
Oh, I love that. I always pick it up when I'm having a long train ride.
Yeah. Well, they do good quizzes.
They do. The crossword in there is fantastic.
So, roughly 3 years ago, the venerable brand began exploring 2 initiatives better suited to the Jetsons than a fast food original player.
Was it divorce?
One was what's become a highly publicized partnership with Miso Robotics and Flippy 2, which essentially takes over the fire station. The other was the deal with MasterCard of the drive-through AI, Julia, which takes and processes orders with customers every time they cross a loop detector. Also, it's weird they gave the fry cook a male-gendered name, Flippy 2, but the order processor a female-gendered name, Julia.
Curious, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, because it's got to be sexy when you're having your order taken.
So
you don't want a robot dude. What are you, gay?
I mean, yeah, not even AI can escape the gender division of labor, unfortunately.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
Susan Carroll Boser, White Castle's CIO, had an idea. AI and robotics aren't there to replace hospitality. Rather, they're tools designed to amplify guest satisfaction for a new age of running restaurants and, quote, create memories.
I mean, I guess any activity technically creates memories apart from, like, doing GHB.
Or like sleeping,
in this case, predictable memories. Like no one will ever, like Jenny will never go like the extra mile for you or like be kind to you or nice to you in a way that like an actual
Jenny will never be.
It is Julia.
Julia will never be impressed that you got really high, went on a very long road trip, rode a cheetah who was also high.
Did surgery on a guy without being a doctor. It all comes back.
Did surgery.
It was legal. It was in the UK.
Have sex with someone else's wife. You know, Julia won't appreciate that.
No.
Right? And I feel like that's what the magic's really got in all this.
And this is, I think, is the nut graph of the article. The White Castle was drawn to this technology for reasons touted by industry peers. Let's call it what it is, he says. We are struggling to get enough labor on the floor, so Julia's not taking a job from anyone. What that really means, right?
You're not paying enough to keep labor.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously. I mean, it's so fucking laughable, isn't it? Like, obviously, it's not that there are not jobs. It's that you're not fucking paying people like a living wage, right? Like, everyone is on poverty wages. And in particular, I think what's interesting is that so many people a lot of people are putting this down to like furlough, right? And down to the fact that like people have been furloughed and then realize actually like, fuck this shit, like I deserve a better quality of life. The truth is actually for a lot of hospitality workers, people didn't get furloughed in loads of cases, right? Like some of the workers that I was organising with like during the pandemic, which is when we set up like South London Bartenders Network, they were designated freelance workers precisely so the company could get out of like doing furlough because they would have incurred costs through doing that, right? With like NI payments and whatever. And like similarly, like loads of people who were working in hospitality at the time, like suddenly their pay slips were changed. So like extant holiday pay wasn't calculated. So I think there is like a kind of like, in some sense, there is a shift that people are like, actually, we're not putting up with this anymore. But I think it's more material. I think it's more that actually like so many people are so much worse off that like going to work and earning like £8.40 an hour like I did in my first bar job, for example, like just simply like doesn't pay, and people aren't going to like sacrifice every ounce of dignity like serving a fucking hamburger to a Karen, right?
Yeah. And I don't know what kind of hospitality and like pubs and restaurants are, but I know of like friends who kind of have similar situations in like different places where they kind of in jobs where like maybe a decade ago they would have been taken on as like a member of staff or at least like someone with a contract. Like their contracts, like so, all their sort of agreements changed to become freelancers, and as those agreements changed, also the demands placed on them would increase as part of like the right to sort of work there, right? So in the case of like working in a gym, for example, they went from kind of being like personal trainers or like people who kind of just worked on like the floors of a gym to, oh, if you actually want the right to work here, you have to sort of take on duties that were the duties of cleaning staff who they let go in part, or they've cut down quite a lot. And I wondered whether like,
You've
is
got
it
to
a
be
similar
the gym surgeon now as well?
Exactly, yeah. So is it like a similar situation there where it's just like, you know, you're not only sort of like on precarious conditions to begin with, but you almost have like for the right to actually earn a measly like income, you end up having to take on more responsibilities, literally because you're sort of coerced into doing it.
I mean, I think that is true, but like I also don't think it's new, right? So like back when I think it was like 2017, 2018, there was the McStrike campaign, right? Which like I wasn't involved in, but I was kind of peripherally involved in because we went on strike at a similar time. And when I was talking to like other young hospitality workers, like Greg's workers, TGI Fridays workers, McDonald's workers, like Wetherspoon's workers, like everyone was saying the same thing, which is that like no one was paid quite enough to actually live on. Everyone was expected last minute to take on shifts that they shouldn't have. Everyone was expected, if necessary, to work, you know, in a lot of cases, more than the European Working Time Directive without signing an opt-out, which was illegal. But the reason that they could rely on that is basically solidarity in the workplace, right? Like you would step up for your co-worker if they really couldn't do something, if they were ill, rather than having like a well-staffed like front of house, for example. So like it's kind of always been that way in lots of ways.
My really quickly, my question also is like, in terms of new shit, what about both Brexit and COVID, a thing that we did to ourselves, and then like just dumb luck that like service workers were more exposed to than pretty much anyone.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of why like our organising, like, you know, which we'd been in like South London, we've been talking about the idea for a while, but it had to happen during the pandemic because like we suddenly realised that we were like at risk, and there are cases, you know, that I know and that I was working with of people who like couldn't see their families for 6 months because they hadn't been furloughed, and the places they were working at, in particular, this was true of breweries, said, okay, well, we can't put you on the bar, but we are going to give you some hours working because you're freelance, where you can either be like canning beers or you can be like on a bike or like on a scooter delivering them. And there wasn't any kind of promise of a number of hours that people would be working for that. It certainly wasn't matching up to the actual wages that they would have been owed through furlough, but it did mean that people couldn't see their families for 6 months. There was an intensification of surveillance that went alongside that. So when stuff started to open up as well, when some places actually had more staff than they needed doing shorter hours, they were able just to get rid of a whole load of people, either through disciplining them or just because they were on 0 hours. They'd never been promised anything in the first place. What's really interesting though, since kind of like, you know, Brexit and like the pandemic, is that the hospitality sector is struggling for like other reasons anyway, right? So like the increase in like energy prices and supply chain stuff is having, you probably will have noticed this, right? Like it's becoming more common to find a £6 pint of beer in just like a regular pub, right? And that's because brewing is like a really energy intensive process, right? But when people say that that's the reason why we can't pay more than this, we can only pay you a certain amount, That's what people were saying before the energy crisis, or that's what people were saying before the pandemic. That's what they said before Brexit. Like, there's never been a time where people have been like, oh, you know what, actually, now we can pay you a living wage.
And the funny thing is about the living wage is that going back to White Castle, which I'm aware we're having a transatlantic comparative discussion, but these dynamics are similar, even if there is less capital investment in the UK because the government seems to actively discourage its own ideology. Is that so Flippy 2 is offered as a robot as a service subscription model. So just like employment is a human as a service subscription model.
I really
Flippy
hate
2,
that shit.
Yeah, isn't it fun? So it's $3,000 a month, which again, like that's
Jesus.
that's and they say yes, that's more than you'd have to pay someone on $15 an hour. But you can stay open
substantially more.
Yeah, you can stay open for longer.
It doesn't organize. It doesn't complain. It certainly doesn't unionize. Like,
precisely.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what they're actually fighting against there is like the fact that if you treat your workers like shit, we will take stuff back, right? So like before I worked at the Ivy House, when I was working at like quite a shitty bar in Brixton, like they paid us so little, they treated us like absolute scum. And it was like it was the closest thing I've done to like physical labor. I was a barback, and the absence of an E is very important there. I was a barback and I would have to like, you know, like carry crates and crates of beer, be changing kegs. There was like a club, 4 bars and several food carts like on one site. And so what I would do was just steal like as much booze as I could, and like even like go in and like steal chips as they were making them, right, for customers, because that's what you do. Like Julia is not going to do that
direct
shit.
action, baby.
Yeah, no,
Interestingly,
literally, right?
QSR magazine, it's not quarterly, it's monthly. QSR magazine addresses this directly as well, saying one of the other advantages is that you can control portion sizes centrally. And what's implied there is no one's going to grab a little burger when they're hungry, because Julia and Flippy too don't have any kind of human desires. They are automatable.
Well, they've seen that tweet of the guy who used to work at McDonald's who was like, I'll level with you whenever someone ordered 20 nuggets. I was not counting that shit. I was stuffing as many in there as would fit in the box. And that is solidarity.
And the other thing here, right, is that that hospitality employment, generally speaking, the way it's structured is that it is a combination of customer interaction, but also, you know, as we've been talking about, like actually making the thing, carrying the thing. You have to start and stop many different tasks at once. And one of the things that these people are touting as a solution to this from Julia and Flippy is that you never have to take an order, go make the drink, give the person the drink, et cetera, which allows for a higher throughput of orders. But what that means, right, is remember, when we look back at something like the steam loom, right?
I'm always looking at the steam loom.
I love looking at a steam loom.
One of our favorite activities.
Yeah.
Well, if you're not looking at it, you're not going to be able to tell the children where to put their hands in to get the stuff out of it.
I had to grind for this view, and the view is a steam loom.
Yeah, the Trashfuture steam looming manufacturing.
Also, doctor's office, NFT storage warehouse.
Shop.
Yeah.
The steam from the loom powers the wind turbine, right?
Getting a sick freight off of a jet of steam.
Yeah, people talk about going to the hairdresser for a weave, but not in the way that we've come up with.
That's an efficient way, you know, instead of doing a hot towel, you could go into the steam room, but also, and just be careful because someone might be doing surgery in there.
Yeah. So
exactly.
Anyway, but we think about the steam loom, right? One of the things that drove the Industrial Revolution, which kicked off a lot of these processes that are currently drowning the world in a toxic gas,
child labor,
was the fact. Well, yes, but was the fact that once you improve the throughput of one part of the production line, that every other part of the whole value chain has to improve to catch up, including things like logistics. And so all of a sudden you invent the steam loom, it becomes necessary to massively improve your efficiency of, say, picking and shipping cotton, of processing it, of creating the shirts, and so on and so on. These logics are self-reinforcing. And they say outright, one of the great things about Julia is that she never stops taking orders ever, which can massively intensify either the work that the humans are going to have to do in the White Castle, or it's going to basically make it necessary to replace them all with Flippies.
Yeah, exactly. And this is something, you know, that like I've seen like in the past, like talking to Greg's workers, where like the way that a lot of these systems work is that they will work by like the most productive kind of rate at which things can be done, right? So like what was happening in Greg's is workers were being effectively punished because if they managed to do all of the tasks they had to do at the insane rate and the understaffing at which, you know, they were told to do it. And this includes, for example, like when Greg started opening earlier. So you had like 2 runs of breakfast, right? You had to make like double the amount of food. But you kind of were doing it with like less staff. If you managed to do that once, that then became the norm that you were expected to uphold. And if you failed to do that, then that was like one strike against you. So it's a direct strategy of trying to like increase precarity as like a very psychological thing as well, as much as it is a material problem.
Mm-hmm. And, so if you look at this as a whole, right? And again, not specifically about White Castle, but about the way the hospitality industry works and specifically how it uses technology, it is all behind all of the AI, the shiny promises of AI that talk of the Jetsons' future. What actually you're looking at is increased surveillance and control, increased precarization, even though what they always say this, and it's in the article actually talks out of both sides of its mouth, right? It says, oh, we're not trying to lose anybody. In fact, we can't hire enough people. We just don't want to pay them more. What we're going to do is redeploy everyone so that they can be creating memories with the customers of White Castle.
What memory? Like, have you like been to a McDonald's like where they do like the staff are just kind of stopping people fighting and cleaning sick and like that's it.
But
like,
I mean, that's I think
don't memory. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, if you see like a pretty sick fight,
Kevin,
then, like,
you're being redeployed to jack off the customers. So trying to create memories here.
Right. So in fact, right. It's creating memorable moments. Sorry, is what it's called. But they say, right, they say in a lot of its stores, White Castle has gone from having 2 employees because its fryer line is split, sandwich goes one way, sides go another, to now where all food heads in the same direction. Then they take that second employee and repurpose them, quote unquote. Say, get them in a window to help make a favorable impression. But White Castle's fryer has now become a bottleneck. You have to be an octopus to run the thing, or you just have to be Flippy too now. But the other thing is what's happening in America and also in the UK actually as well, is do you know what the social service of last resort is? Fast food restaurants.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, this is completely true. But it's also true of like, and this is quite specifically more a British thing, like pubs, right? Like pubs are some of the few spaces that people can access as like social spaces, right? Like there's a real sense that like the pub is like a great British institution that is also like doing God's work, whereas previously people might go to like, churches, for example, like with the decline of like organized religion, like in Britain to a great extent, like pubs sort of weirdly fulfill that function, right? And so I think it's interesting that they're talking about redeploying people to more front-facing roles, because the truth is that whether you're working in fast food or you're working in like pubs or bars, a big part of the work that you have to do is actually like conflict de-escalation, right? Like I've been working in hospitality sites when people have come with like concealed weapons. I've been working when there's been domestic violence incidents. I've been working when police have come. I've been working when there's been sexual assault. I've been working when like people have been like getting into fist fights. My colleagues have been working when there's been stabbings. Like de-escalation is such a massive part of what we do, but it's not in any job description, right? When you're applying for a job at a bar, no one says, do you know how to de-escalate? Do you know? Yeah,
no one's like doing like HEFAT training or like, showing you how to like do use a tourniquet and stuff.
No, exactly, right?
And they should, like, like I've seen some, like when we had the old place and like when we were in the old place in Whitechapel, that the pub like near, everyone knows, the pub.
The geezer pub, yeah.
I remember like they had like fucking like glass bottle fight in the middle of the day. And like one of the guys who works at the pub had to come out and like cover the wound until the ambulance came.
You fully need the like thin blue line flags that cops have, but it's a bar instead of a thin blue line because like there's more entitlement to for sure. Like
the thin mahogany line.
The thin mahogany line between order and chaos, Yeah.
I mean, yeah, oftentimes that is the bartender, right? How the bartender responds to something can either lead to something escalating with like fatal consequences or not, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I do sometimes think that like whenever there's like a social problem in this country and the immediate answer is call in the army. It's like, no, you should just like call in like pub workers and people work at McDonald's and stuff. They'd probably like they would be better at doing it and managing it. Like, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's a really important point, right? Like, because what you've highlighted on there is that like there are so many like kind of hidden skills, I suppose, that you have to utilize in hospitality, from like management to like de-escalation, all of this stuff that actually means that hospitality workers, while being in one of the worst sectors for union organizing, potentially some of the best place to actually do that organizing work, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
We've already spent, like, I don't know how long I've spent like counseling people through divorces and bereavements and like difficult relationships and like talking to people about their own problems. Like,
We're
Yeah.
sorry about the pre-show chat. It can be a bit of a downer.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, this is in your own writing. You've described this as leaving White Castle behind for a sec. You've described this as being a kind of Avon lady for socialism behind the bar, as it's kind of that's the organizing potential. Of
It's
this
a pyramid
industry.
scheme.
Oh yeah, of course. I should say actually, so like that piece of referencing, which is from like Notes from Below, was collectively written by about 30 bartenders, right? So I can't personally claim that one, but yeah, one of my comrades, who's like had been working in hospitality for a long time, was like, one of the difficulties of trying to unionize hospitality workers is that if every time you go for a post-work piss-up, you're trying to talk to someone about a union, you do become the Avon lady for socialism, and you kind of come across as a bit weird. But I think that's why, like, the reason that kind of we were able to get off the ground with organizing came out of the fact that we were working in the pub at the time, right? Like, you can't really have, I don't think, an effective model where you get external organizers coming into pubs, try to talk to bartenders and tell them why they need to rise up, right? My kind of background in this is that I was working in several horrendous hospitality sites until I ended up working at the Ivy House, which like was so much better. Like, it pays a living wage, it's a community-owned pub, it's not for profit. It had, unfortunately, a manager who was like not ideal, and there were several allegations of bullying against this person, allegations of racism, allegations of like homophobia and all of that. And so the staff put in grievance. Someone suggested a union. And I think the fact that this pub is a 10-minute bus ride from Goldsmiths might be pertinent here, just to bear in mind. So people took to it, right? And so we put in grievances against this manager. He was suspended while under investigation. And as a result of things that he'd said, while he was still under investigation, the pub moved to kind of stop employing some members of staff. Now, we were on 0 hours contracts at this point, and so they weren't being fired, they were just not being offered shifts. Now, we were all in a trade union, but we didn't really know what we were doing. And so what we did was we met up, we had a union meeting, we said, who wants to shut the pub down? Put our hands up. It was unanimous, and we shut it down. We had a very enthusiastic but slightly terrified, amazing organizer from the Bakers Union at the time, who was like, this is not how you legally ballot for strike action, right? Like, it's not a show of hands around a kitchen table. And we were like, fuck it. And luckily, we were able to trade off the fact that the pub, despite the necessary kind of antagonism within it, right, of employer and worker, is actually not an employer that were trying to fuck us over. Like, it's a community-owned pub, like, it's trying to do something good. And that show of force was necessary. And so it was 3 days. And at the end of 3 days, we got staff reinstated, we got fixed term contracts, we got union recognition. And this is while the pub is on a living wage. And this was in 2018. Several years later, there is still an active union branch in the pub that continues to input on management decisions. And there's a really good relationship between staff and management because there is a strong union, right? Like, when you have an issue, you don't think, fuck this, I'm going to go somewhere else. You can talk to your union, who can then have an actual conversation where they represent your interests. And this is why the pub has like one of the like lowest, like, or one of the highest staff retention rates in the sector that I've seen, right? Like I was saying, I've been there for 6 years, not very common. But one thing that we did realize afterwards is that we didn't really know what we were doing following the strike. Like, we didn't realize that we kind of done something almost historic. Like, people don't take wild strike action, and people don't take wildcat strike action in hospitality. And after that, the advice we were getting was, the way that we were being told to operate was as if we were working in a traditional factory floor setting. It wasn't suitable for a workplace where there were 25 members of staff, lots of whom were kind of coming and going. And so we were thinking about this. And over the next year or two, I started volunteering with some community unionism. So Peckham Needs a Pay Rise. It was a campaign to organize Nando's workers, KFC workers, McDonald's workers on Rye Lane, primarily, but also more widely around South London. And that's kind of where I started to actually see how you could actually organize in hospitality. You just couldn't do it through traditional trade union methods. And I was kind of casting around for different ways that we could start to do something with this, because it turns out where the bartenders drink, not the bars that they're working at. So we already, once I started to map it out, had quite a massive dispersed network of bartenders across South London, just based on who drank in whose pubs, right? And it was when the pandemic hit and I was involved in mutual aid organising, because obviously the government weren't doing shit, that some of us had the idea that maybe we could set up some kind of equivalent mutual aid-esque bartenders network, basically, because trade unions won't take on your case if you're in dispute, basically, right? They have to conserve resources. Trade unions also generally will not prioritize small transient workspaces. It's not a great use of resources, right? Because you don't get people staying, you don't get union subs continually coming in. So the idea behind it was just to do what we've kind of called like guerrilla unionism, where like we take on cases for people who are not trade union members. We do what we have to do to represent them. We teach them about their rights. We beg, borrow, and steal until we get them solicitors if necessary. We support them through like ACAS mediation procedures. And we also occasionally have been known to twist the truth a little bit. So nothing scares the shit out of an employer like going in. For a start, if they try to fire someone and that person works in a pub and they say, I'm a union man and I have a rep, they don't know what the fuck's going on. If you then go in and are able to lay out all the ways in which they've contravened the law, which every hospitality employer has in this country, then they will be like, fuck. If you just tell them, whether or not you can verify it, that you have solicitors who are willing to take them to court to get maximum compensation, it's amazing how many jobs you can actually save. And that's the kind of model that we kind of pursued.
I love this. I absolutely love this. I mean, like, for once, the sort of like vexatious legal threat boot is on the other foot.
Yeah.
So let's just say you're listening to this podcast and you're working in
Let's just say you're listening to this podcast and you own a pub. Stop listening to it. Forget everything you've just heard. All of these threats are credible.
Yeah. But let's say you listen to this podcast, you're working in a pub, and you are either you want to get organized or you are worried and you need some protection. How can someone get in touch to get involved?
So like this is one thing I will be honest about, right? So like South London Bartenders Network started like in, what year was the pandemic?
It started in 2020.
Thank you. Yes, it did. It started in 2020. And so it's kind of gone through phases of being like incredibly active. And we've done some like absolutely fucking mental stuff in that time, and some phases of being less active, right? Because none of us are like paid organizers. Like we are mainly people who work in hospitality. But we've also been like, talking to like trade unions and working with trade unions and talking to like workers as they need help. One funny thing that has happened is that someone who I will not name and is definitely not me, has forgotten the password to the social media stuff. So if you just DM me like on Twitter, I'm sure these fine folk will like tag me. You can literally just DM me and we can kind of take it from there. But the idea is to basically help spread these autonomous networks, right? And one really important thing is that like, the fact that this network has like waxed and waned and waxed again, the fact that sometimes we've been organizing seasonal workplaces on the South Bank and gone from having one union member to having a seasonal workplace on the South Bank, giving guarantee offer of repeat fixed term contracts to its staff, right? Like we did that in, I think like a month and a half. Like the stuff that you can do once you have the workforce on board is like absolutely incredible. But like we can only support you to do that, right? You already have the tools if you're working behind a bar to organize. You do it like all the fucking time. We can support you through that, basically.
Okay, well, that Twitter @ will certainly be in the show notes. So if you are listening to this and don't have a Twitter, sorry, so little of it makes sense. But I'm
sorry,
sure
you're getting fired, and there's nothing we can do.
If you're not on Twitter and you're listening to the show, how?
Yeah.
So,
No, I mean, I know a great solicitor who works in a steam room.
Yeah, that's right. He's got an NVQ in law.
yeah.
Steam room centered around a steam loom.
I think that's also as good a place as any to end it. So I want to say, Amar, thank you so much for coming in today.
It's been an absolute delight, Angel. Thank you both.
And-
All.
Indeed. And thank you for listening. And don't forget, there is a Patreon. It is $5 a month. You can subscribe to it and get a second show every week.
You can't unionize. That's the cost of the Patreon. Take it or leave it.
I'm actually here to unionize Trashfuture.
Yeah.
Finally, for too long, I've been
Wait,
oppressed by these people.
unionize against who?
Yeah.
Or are you getting like the patrons to unionize against us? In which case,
please don't do that.
Every single
In which case,
patron
Nate,
will
cut the
sue
mic.
us. Yeah.
Okay. There's a Patreon. There's $5 a month. There's $10 if you want to get a second Britanology and Writtenology episodes where Nate and Milo talk about Britain, or Alice and I talk about books.
The two genders.
That's right. Britain and books. There is also a stream. It is Monday and Thursday evenings most of the time. It runs from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. UK time.
British time? Yeah.
That's right. The theme song is Here We Go by Ginseng. Listen to it on Spotify. Milo, do you have anything?
I'm on tour in general doing previews.
Oh yeah, we're still on tour when this comes out.
Yeah, we will. This is coming out on Tuesday
So if
morning.
you're in Manchester, maybe there will be tickets.
Manchester is the biggest venue, so that
Glasgow was the biggest venue.
No, Manchester is slightly bigger. Glasgow is the silliest size venue because Manchester is a bigger city. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Look,
come see us in Manchester or Glasgow. Come see Milo.
1st of June, I'm in Bath. That's on my.
Sorry.
It should be fun. You know, hey, come see that. I'm going to be in Manchester actually on the 11th of June. I think the 11th. Yeah, I'm going to be doing a new show in Manchester. There's going to be a bunch of. Just go on my website. There'll be tour dates. I don't know them yet.
Yeah, and don't forget, you have to come see us in Glasgow because we're only in the ridiculous venue we're in because we refuse to share a stage with Joanna Cherry. You're working.
Yeah.
You're
I'm
need
sorry
to do
for
cancel
booking her as
culture.
the guest.
give us the fruits of like winning the cancel culture fight, and please come and see us in Glasgow because I live here, and I will be very sad if we don't sell out a venue where I live.
That's right. So, with all that being said, we will see you on the bonus in a couple of days. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.